Hey everybody, Brian here from Working Class Fishing. Today I brought you into the kitchen. We're going to make some smoked salmon dip. Make sure you stay tuned. Okay, today what we're going to do is we're going to make smoked salmon dip. So what I have here is I have some smoked salmon that I got from earlier this year, and that was that one. If you take back look back about 5 days ago, I posted a picture of that. So I turned that older salmon into smoked fish, and this is one of the ways I like to prepare it, and it's a real basic recipe. So what I have is I have an 8-ounce cube of cream cheese, half cup of mayo. I'm also going to put in a half cup of sour cream. I'm going to put in 8 ounces of my smoked salmon here, and so what I've done with this is I've already chopped it up and deboned it. I'm also going to add a tablespoon each of Old Bay seasoning. If you're from Maryland, you're very familiar with that. We're going to throw some Worcester sauce in there, a little bit of chili powder for color, and a little bit of lemon juice. And then my other thing is that I'm going to put a little bit of pickle juice in there from some of my home pickling. So it should be a pretty good recipe here. So one of our favorites in the Pacific Northwest is smoked salmon, and it's a lot of fun because when we have the smoked salmon, we can actually do a lot of different recipes with it. So we can make omelets with it. We can make all kinds of other things. One of my favorites, though, for this time of year is the actual smoked salmon spread because it's so universal. You can put it on bread. You can put it on anything else, and it's really good. So into the bowl that goes. So we have our 8 ounces of cream cheese there. Once we get that going, we're going to go ahead and just kick our paddle on here and just start getting that to work around. And you can see that it kind of just works it into a nice little puree. Then we're going to go ahead, add our mayo, and let that start combining. And get as much of that as we can. So once we start getting all these ingredients combined, you'll see how it comes together. I like using a KitchenAid mixer, but you don't have to. If you have just a spatula, you can work that in with the spatula, and it works out really good. One of my secrets to keeping my kitchen in somewhat good order is only to use 1 cup. I don't go all out like some of these other YouTube chefs do. So I get all those ingredients in there. Make sure you get everything to the last drop as much as you can. And so we start getting our base there that's kind of built for this. So we get our base blended together, everything else. You can see how it kind of comes together there. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that I clear that because you don't want to have lumps in there and all that. You want to have a nice creamy base when you go to start adding stuff to this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just work that around really quick. All right. Go ahead and kick this back on. Go ahead and get my fish in there. Like I said, I've already deboned that salmon. So you'll notice that that salmon's actually a little bit lighter. And the reason why is it's a little bit older. So that salmon came out of a river here, and it's a Chinook salmon. And you'll say, well, Chinook salmon should have more of a reddish color. That's true. But this one was starting to get pretty old. So this was real late, kind of mid-fall. And that fish came, and it was a hatchery fish. In the post, I explained kind of what was going on with that. And so what it was we have fish that come in that may be considered to be like a spring fish or something like that. By the way, I just added the tablespoon of lemon juice, tablespoon of Worcester sauce. I'm going to add in the tablespoon of Old Bay here as this is combining and mixing. Anyways, so those fish will come in. They're still coming in now, and it's December. So you can still have those fish. I'm going to add a little bit more because Old Bay is just really good. They'll keep coming in. And so this was a hatchery fish. I knew it was a later spring Chinook because they do not put any hatchery fall Chinook in that river. So that's how I know that that's an old fish. Nonetheless, a lot of people would have kicked it back. And because it was a hen, it had real viable eggs for bait. So I went ahead and took it. And I knew exactly what I was going to do with that fish as soon as I got it. I knew it was going to go into the smoker for the meat, and the eggs were going to get turned into bait. And the eggs were pretty loose in the skein, so they will be turned into spawn sacks. So I went ahead and added a tablespoon of chili powder in there as well. All right. Let's see how we're doing here. Go ahead and kick that off. I always like to clean that paddle off there. Make sure that we're getting everything blended in there really good. Notice that we had a little bit of seasoning up there. This is just a super simple, quick, easy dip to make. It's like 5 minutes, a couple ingredients. It's really, really, really good. And you guys will really like this. Now, some folks, they put capers in there and everything else. You can do that. I'm not a fan of capers personally, but a lot of people are. So I elect not to put the capers in there. Go ahead and kick that on again. I'm going to just go ahead and add a splash of pickle juice in there just to give it a little bit of that dill pickle flavor, because dill always goes fantastic with salmon. I'm just going to do a little bit of that. You don't want to thin the mix too much. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this out with a spatula. We'll let it cool, and then we will enjoy it. So, pull that up. You can see that we got a nice color to this from that Old Bay and that chili powder. Super, super good, super quick, super simple recipe. It's got some kick to it with that chili powder, the Old Bay, really good seasoning. I'm going to let this chill in the fridge. It'll get served on some crackers. And this is going on the table for Christmas. So my second recipe I'm doing here is I'm going to do a clam dip. And so what I'm using are some fresh razor clams. Actually, they're frozen, but there were some clams that we got last year. And so I'm going to go ahead and poach those really quick, get those cooked. They only take a couple minutes. They're already pre-chopped. And then we're going to throw that in another dip over here. So we'll get that. So we want our clams to all go in at the same time. So we don't want to wait around too long. We want to get all of these in because they're going to cook super quick. And so once we get those going, we're going to have to really stay on top of them, make sure that they boil. Now we have to reserve some of this juice as well. Some people prefer to smoke them, and then that cooks them in that way. I'm doing this really quick because I was going to originally use different clams, but I decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and use some razor clams here. So just added those. These thawed out of the freezer, and we're just going to go ahead and hit those for a couple minutes. So 1 to 2 minutes max. Now, some people will actually put these in the microwave, and they'll microwave those. But basically what we're looking for is we're taking what they call the neck and the foot of the clam, and we use those in chowder and dips and stuff like that. They're actually fairly tender. The neck has a lot more strength to it, and that's actually how you find them in the sand. You'll find a depression, and their neck's coming up. And when their neck comes up out of the sand and the water washes over during the tide, that's actually how the clam feeds itself. And they have a pretty decent sized neck, but they also have the main meat that's on the inside of the shell too. But we're going to use the necks and feet. Razor clams are a delicacy. Down at the fish market down the road from where I live, they're selling for $16 a pound. Definitely worth the fuel, the gas, and the effort to go down to the beach and dig some of these guys. We're allowed 15 a day. You can't put any back that are small. You get 15 flat out. And so we really try to narrow in on the areas that have the best. So it's really a good thing. So I'm going to finish cooking these up. We'll be right back. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put this together now. So what we have here is we have our poached chopped razor clams. I chopped them up, kind of went back through them, sorted them out. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add in the cream cheese. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go with cream cheese. All of these dips have a cream cheese base, which, as you all know, cream cheese is super good. So we just drop that cream cheese in there. Go ahead, kick on the little paddle here. I'm running stir right now, so that's the setting on the KitchenAid, or number 1. So I'm not really ripping on this super hard. And then we're going to go ahead and mayo is another base component of this. I'm going to go ahead and put in a ½ cup of mayo. Now, one of the original recipes that I have seen before called for 2 cubes of this of the cream cheese, but I'm going to go a little bit thinner on the mix here. So I let this get up to room temperature, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of scoop this down in the bowl. That way this can continue to combine as we go along here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just kick that back on, let it work together. So really important to get those ingredients combined on this. That way you don't have anything to chance with it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take my razor clams. So I went a little bit less, and I'm guesstimating I have about 6 ounces of razor clams. A lot of them call for 8 to 10 ounces. So we're going to go ahead and mix those in. So remember, I put these in the freezer. I ended up putting them in an ice water bath just to stop the cooking process, because once they get too cooked, it's over. They just turn to rubber. So we got that going. I'm going to go ahead and incorporate my fresh onion in here too, because I really like onion with seafood. Some people do, some people don't. You can also do capers, you can do scallions, whatever else. But I have some red onion here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in there, into that dip. And then we'll get going with our seasoning. So, don't worry, my counters are clean. Alright. I got all that in there. Okay. So, I'm going to go ahead and let that run. Let that combine. Okay. So as that's combining there, I'm going to go ahead, kick that off. I'm going to go and make sure that we're keeping all of our stuff down here. Really important when we're making these spreads and dips and stuff like that. So the razor clam is a Northwest classic shellfish. And we have quahogs, cockles. We have one called the gooey duck. If you ever watched Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, he actually went to a gooey duck farm up in Puget Sound. It's a really good clam. It's basically a larger version of the razor clam. But the Pacific razor clam is absolutely one of the most fantastic shellfish out there. And there's a variety of ways you can prepare them. You can smoke them. A lot of people prefer them fried. They go into a chowder really well too, so they're super good as a chowder as well. You just can't go wrong with a razor clam. And 15 doesn't sound like a lot, but they are a big clam. So they definitely have the size and the girth to support them. So Worcester sauce. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of that good salty flavor in there. So any kind of seafood dip that I like to make, Worcester sauce. It has to be a part of it. Same thing with Old Bay seasoning. Again, talking to my folks from Maryland out there off the Hooks Jigs. Mr. Scott, you are probably very familiar with this, but this is a staple in my cupboard. And I like the seafood boil mix, and I also like the seasoning. It's just so good. Love this stuff. So just a tablespoon of each. We don't need to go over the top. Now, another thing we can add some lemon juice if we want, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little taste test here. We're just going to make sure it's where we want it. A lot of times, a lot of citric acid really helps out. So let's go ahead and take that. Now, if you get your seasoning up in here, you want to get all of that seasoning you can combine into your spread. So make sure that you really fold it. Work anything that's not getting picked up in the bottom in there. But a mixer really does make easy work out of this. And it's just super good. So we will give this a shot here in a second. Now, I'm a fan of tortilla chips, but Ritz cracker, really good with this. Any kind of rice cracker, anything else. Big thing with this one is if you do have a shellfish allergy, be careful of it. I'm going to grab a tortilla chip. We're going to give this a try. And we're going to see if we need to add anything else to it. So I'm going to just go ahead and take a little bit of that. I think we're good. So basic recipe again, super cool, a lot of fun. Love cooking like this. It's just a great way to use all of your catch. A lot of people don't think about that when they're catching something. They're thinking, well, I can just go ahead and do this or that. But there's just so many different ways we can prepare fish and seafood, and it's so good. That is one good clam. One last thing I forgot to add in there was the clam juice, but I got that in there now. Changes the texture just a little bit, but what that does is that kind of makes it more of a creamy spread, creamy mix. It just helps out. That's why you reserve some of that liquid. You don't want to dump all that liquid in there, but just enough to give it kind of that nice silky appearance. So if you take a look at this here, now we have more of a silky appearance. That's going to be roughly about 1/8 of a cup of that clam juice. If you were doing this with any other type of clams, like if you were wanting to experiment with like canned clams or something, you would just dump the juice off that. So that gives you kind of an idea of how much clam juice you'd have there. So just wanted to add that in really. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. As always, thanks for watching, and if you want to see future cooking videos, make sure to leave a comment below.